On today's show, we find out what quarterbacks we think are realistic backups we can grab this coming offseason. We also find out how we feel about Taybor Pepper's viral video and who is our player to watch this week at the Combine. Remember, as always, you can listen to this episode on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast from. You're inside the Johnny Dell Football Academy. Hello, Niner faithful, and welcome to the Johnny Dell's Football Academy podcast on the channel that's trying to answer the whys and hows of the game. I am Adam Marino, as always, joined by Mr. Johnny Dell. What's up, man? How was your weekend?
It was good. Got a couple of kids that were a little bit under the weather, so I'm running
Tis the
off a little
season.
bit. Yeah, a little low on sleep this week, but we are here, alert, ready to jump into some Niner stuff.
We are pushing through, right, in this February. You'll notice those watching on YouTube, remember to like and subscribe and follow the page, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, all that jazz. But I say this because you'll notice my Buster Posey jersey as I am celebrating baseball season. It's something to get me through to football season, really, is all it is. But I do love my Giants, faithful to the Bay. So let us jump in. Some things, some chatter. I call it February chatter. Take that for what it means. It means it's February and that, we're not getting into the second game of the preseason. Who do we think? We're not there yet. So it's February, but I want to talk through some of these quarterbacks that look to be getting cut. You'll also notice um, if you're watching on YouTube, my Fort Wayne hoodie. That's where I reside in Indiana, which is Colts country. And I can tell you the buzz here is Matt Ryan is getting the axe. And besides Matt Ryan, we have some quarterbacks that were getting a little bit of buzz. The three besides Matt Ryan that I wanted to get into it and get your thoughts on is Marcus Mariota, who beat us, right? And then just this year, and then Mitch Trubisky and famous Jameis Winston. So let's get into it. Let's talk about those four. What is your take?
Well, I know that there was a certain Twitter personality, I'll call him that, not really a beat writer, uh, expert troll, we'll say, that had talked about a number of these names and how they make sense. And I will say they absolutely don't make sense, uh, because we're not looking for a quarterback number two. We're looking for a quarterback number three. And that changes the landscape of who is available, who will be willing to take on that role, and how much money you're going to allocate to that position. You're talking about quarterback number three. You're not going to sit there and pay your quarterback number three more than Trey Lance. That's not going to happen. That was a big sticking point with Jimmy Garoppolo's contract when he restructured with us, right? Was that they weren't going to pay him more than Trey Lance, who was the starter. So when you start looking at a couple of these names, I think like a Matt Ryan. Is Matt Ryan going to come in and take a quarterback number three role? No. He's going to be number two at worst. He will not take a number three role. So
And he
I
truly
don't
wants
see.
one. He has said he
Right,
wants to play.
right. He wants a number one role. That's why I say two at worst. That's if he cannot find a starting position somewhere. You will see him maybe accept a backup role. But I think there's going to be a number of teams that would be interesting to him. I would not be surprised if he takes a very low salary to go to a team like the Saints, a team that has a very good defense that maybe is even more primed for a playoff push, especially with Tom being out in Tampa Bay for a playoff run. They weren't that far off this year. Now they're going to have some major cap hurdles to get through, but I look at a guy like Matt Ryan as somebody who he's nearing the end of his career, has not had a Super Bowl, is looking to maybe make another run, and you start looking around. There's not a lot of good options. If you also want to get paid a lot of money, he has made a lot of money, but he's going to want a starting position. I think of like Tampa Bay. That's another possibility, a team that doesn't have a ton of cap space, but makes sense as far as bringing in a veteran that helps them transition through, and that who knows what kind of noise they can make, because if you make it to the playoffs, you never know what teams might get injured. We know all about that. So a guy like Matt Ryan makes no sense to me. A guy like Jameis Winston doesn't make sense to me. I think you're going to see the similar situation. He wants to be a starter in this league. He wants to, at worst, be a number two. You look at Mitchell Trubisky. There's nothing about Mitch Trubisky that makes me want him on our team. I think we've seen enough of that story to say, I don't even want him. I would rather take a flyer on a guy who's been a 5-year backup that you don't know exactly what he could do than necessarily what he's going to bring to the table. I don't
Like
see
a
a lot
Jordan
of
Love.
value.
Like a Jordan Love.
I don't see a lot of upside there. I don't see, and he's not going to come on a veteran minimum salary. He's going to want something a little bit higher than that. A guy, I'm blanking on your fourth name there. Marcus Mariota. One thing that Shanahan's really big on is taking care of the ball. And I think we all remember the impossible interception that Marcus Mariota threw. If you didn't see it, go look it up. It happened this year. He's literally falling to the ground and flung the ball over his shoulder as he's falling down for an interception. There's not much that needs to be said about that.
Yeah,
so I just don't. There's some guys who make noise in the community to make noise, and I think that's what a lot of those are. I don't think I really feel like that's just kind of looking around at who's going to be released, and hey, we should grab one of these guys. That would be really smart. No, that wouldn't be really smart. I don't agree with it. We're talking about quarterback number 3, okay? And yes, we have seen your number 3 could be playing in the game. As far as for the 49ers and how they build their team and how they go through that, I don't see them taking that approach. I see them either going through the draft, which there's not a lot of good draft prospects this year, or I see a guy that is comfortable in that backup role, that has proven they can survive in the NFL in that backup role, and obviously do carve out a decent a pretty decent living when you consider what these guys make for as long as they've been around. A couple of names that do pop up that are going to be available this season is a guy like Case Keenum. I would be more interested in Case Keenum over Mitchell Trubisky. I think he fits the style of what we do. I think it would be a simple transition. If you're saying you're going from Brock Purdy to Case Keenum, I see that as a simple transition within the offense. That's not going to be a huge shift in philosophy and what you do. So that's there, and because there's going to be the Trey Lance kind of side of the playbook, which isn't a ton as far as the plays we run that much differently. It's a lot of it is in the running game and where you're putting your running backs. So, there's going to be that Trey Lance side. There's going to be the Brock Purdy side as they go through this offseason. A guy like Case Keenum makes sense. He can fit that Brock Purdy side. Another guy that would be interesting is Kyle Allen, a name that we haven't heard of for a little while. He started a few games for Carolina back when we steamrolled Carolina. He started out pretty hot in his rookie year when he came in with Carolina, and then really just kind of fell off a cliff, but has had some time to maybe reboot and maybe we kick the tires and see what's under the hood. It is Kyle Allen, a guy, he, as far as arm, again, another fit that goes kind of with the Brock Purdy or Case Keenum. You're not going to see a big transition. Look at Nate Sudfeld. He's going to be available. We had him here last year, and he was the plan for the number 2 coming into this season. And then Brock Purdy, what looked as good as he was, and then Jimmy Garoppolo became available. So Nate Sudfeld got kicked down the road and then was picked up. Do we bring him back? He's a guy that obviously they feel comfortable with. They felt very good coming into this last season with him as the backup. So do they bring him in? Another guy that's been around the 49ers before is Nathan Peterman. Do we see about these? Remember, these is quarterback number 3. We're not. It's what we saw with Brock Purdy last year as a number 3 coming in and winning all these games is exceedingly rare in the NFL. Exceedingly rare. So you're not looking for a guy that was a former top talent to be your number 3 quarterback. If you are, that is a big red flag on that player. That means that there's a whole lot of teams that don't even want them as their number 2. That is a problem. So those are names that actually make sense to me, not just in hypothetical space. I was going to name some names, but I probably shouldn't. In this hypothetical space where we don't actually think about what we're putting out there or what we're saying with some of these guys. Sorry, I just some of what gets put out there really drives me insane, and I think it drives a lot of people insane. I think it drives a lot of the fans nuts and people who watch this channel nuts because you come here for something that's not that, and we're not that because we don't like it either. And so those are names that make a lot more sense to me. I think they're going to come with cheap deals. They're not going to be expensive. They're going to be guys who know how to function as a backup. They're going to be able to function in this offense, and they're going to be able to be that number 3, or are these guys that you're looking at as that reserve number 4 if your number 1 goes down for an extended period of time. And the NFL is really looking at, do they allow you to take a third quarterback? Do you make a roster spot exemption for a third quarterback to be on the field? So this is that kind of spot, and these are guys that I would feel not amazing about coming in and playing long stretches at a time. But if this is your number 3, it makes sense cap wise, it makes sense role wise, it makes sense in every single way.
So almost shifting gears, not quite. We're sticking quarterback, but here's a question that's going to seem random, but I'll tie it in. Did you watch any of the XFL?
I have not watched any of the XFL. I had a very busy weekend. I'm debating whether I watch the XFL or USFL this year, and the only reason why is because there's a USFL team that has only been an hour and a half from me in Birmingham. Birmingham built a very nice stadium that's there. I mean, it's not NFL quality by any means, but it's a brand new stadium there for baseball, for football, for the USFL. And so, I'm thinking about going and checking out some games there, maybe see if there's a guy in the USFL that we should think about bringing over. So I haven't made an emotional commitment to the XFL. I can't think of the XFL without thinking of Vince McMahon and he hate me. And Tommy Maddox, remember he was a quarterback for the Steelers for a while. He came out of the XFL. And that football, the black and red football that they had when it was, in a time where people were making things all black just for the sake of being all black. I remember that was shortly, not too long before the 49ers went with their all black uniforms that made it impossible to see the numbers if you ever watch the game film. Some people really love those jerseys. And I say, man, those were the worst to watch game film with because you could not see any jersey numbers, not from the all 22. And so you're always trying to guess at who was out there on the field. It was like, I don't even know. But yeah, that's what I think. And the greatest contribution that the XFL ever gave to football was the on-field camera, the camera on wire. If maybe people don't realize, the XFL was the first one to do that, to put a camera on a wire hanging over this field and come in and give you those shots that are now standard in every single football game. And the XFL was criticized when they did that because the thought was you're going to have all these punts that hit the wire, and we maybe had one last year that did. They didn't have a replay of it, but to think about the thousands of games that have been played with this, and that really hasn't been an issue. So kudos to whoever that was with the XFL that came up with that idea, because that is now a staple in the NFL. That was something they looked at. If there's one thing you can always expect from a Vince McMahon's Bond project is production values. Is you're always going to find a new way to get production values. So kudos to them for that. But I have not watched any of the XFL this year.
So I will say I have not either, but there's a story circulating about AJ McCarron and that he decided to even go into the XFL because he wanted to build memories with his kids as far as him actually playing football. And now he's 2-0 and has led some great drives, supposedly, as far as what Twitter says. And I'm curious, a guy like that who says that, but if the NFL comes calling again for more money, would he fit? And again, that name seems to me to be around the same as a Kyle Allen or I mean, what are we talking here? AJ McCarron is not any worse than the guys that you mentioned, is he? What do you think?
Well, McCarron's been is an interesting thing. Very successful in college, from the University of Alabama. He was a guy that never really stuck on in the NFL as he's very limited as far as physical abilities. And with that, if a guy's going to be very limited physically, you want to see absolute quick, decisive decision making, like what we saw from Brock Purdy. For the most part, Brock did have moments where it was just a tick slow, and again, that's to be expected of
He's
a
a
rookie
rookie.
quarterback. Okay, he's a rookie. It was those moments where you're like, oh yeah, he is a rookie. It wasn't like, oh dear Lord, he's a terrible player. No, it
Right.
was just like you were just reminded that he was a rookie. AJ McCarron has always kind of looked like that most of his career. When he's had opportunities in preseason, yeah, he can go and maybe he's looked like he's had a couple good drives in the XFL. We're also talking about this is the junior league,
Oh, no
at
question.
most I mean, where do we even rank the XFL when we start
Right.
looking
No,
at
no, no.
XFL and USFL?
I'm only
Um,
saying it because he has taken snaps in the NFL. There are other quarterbacks in the XFL who have not and will not ever take snaps in the NFL, and he has. That's the
right.
only reason the name even
Right,
comes
and
up.
I totally get that. I'm just I guess I'm talking to the thought of that of what is intriguing about that and the buzz maybe that's going around of, oh hey, this guy has had a couple good drives, and could we see him coming in and being that position? I don't see a lot of upside there. I just really don't. To me, and especially where AJ McCarron is in his career, he's looking to at least have something for his kids to have watched for him playing football before he's done. Like, I mean, he's been around the league for a long time, and so it's more. I just don't see where that's going to fit in with us as well. There would have to be an incredible showing. He would have to really just elevate himself to the absolute top of that league. Much like we could say that Manscaped has elevated themselves to the top of the male grooming league. If you were looking for any male grooming supplies, I will tell you Manscaped is the place to go. They are a good friend of the show, a good sponsor of the show. We love that they are sponsoring the show and they're helping us keep through the off season. So if you would like to partake in any of this Manscaped stuff, you can visit manscaped.com and use promo code JD49 today to get 20% off, 20% off and free shipping. 20% off and free shipping anything at the store. That can be anything from the lawnmower, that can be the beard hedger, which I used this weekend to get rid of all the growth that was happening. It was time to go, and I'll tell you, my wife loves it because I can take the beard hedger in the shower. All this is done. I just buzz it all off. No mess around the sink. No hairs. I don't know about you guys, but my hairs are really long. They're coarse, and when that trimmer hits my face, it's like an explosion of confetti. Okay, they don't like I can be right over the sink and trying to get everything, aiming it down into the sink, and I'm trimming, and it's flying off in every single direction. and I'll have stuff end up over by her side of the vanity, which we have a double vanity, and it's even enter over there, and I don't even know how that happens. And or have you ever gotten through? You buzz your beard, and you go and next thing you know, you scratch your cheek a little bit, and you're covered in hair. It's all the little bits that got stuck in your beard, and you've rinsed and you've rubbed with the towel and you've done everything. Again, you take it in the shower with you, you rinse it down, you wash off, you're good, you're ready to go. It's right there with you. It's completely waterproof. It has their skin safe technology, so even if you think you're not great, if you're shaving by braille, you can do this. Okay, if you're trimming by braille, you're good to go. And this is a brand new product from Manscaped. I got mine in January as they were sending out the promo materials, and I was thrilled to get it. And it has been the best beard trimmer I've ever had. I've had some of the higher quality name brands. I will tell you, the beard hedger beats them all. I lived for years just getting the ones from Walmart, and you know what I'm talking about. You know, ones you go, man, I don't want to spend $100, $150 on a beard trimmer, and it's great for about 3 trims, and then the blade starts getting dull, and it's yanking your hairs out, and you avoid doing any trimming because of that. I'll tell you, the beard hedger, best beard trimmer I have ever had. It made me good. I went just with the 0.5 guard on this one, and it got me a good kind of 5 o'clock shadow trim, and I'm good to go. I keep it at that. I don't like being fully clean shaven a lot of times. It gets so, especially during the winter. You need a little fuzz there to protect the cheeks and the neck from all the cold.
Right.
So man, again, remember that is manscaped.com. Promo code JD49. Check out the beard hedger. You will not be disappointed. So, that's what I see with AJ McCarron. I think he would have to be really at the top of his game and make some big noise this year. And if he does, again, I think at this stage of his career, you'd be looking at, does the team take a flyer on him as the number 2, or are they bringing him in as a camp arm to compete and see what happens? But if he can't elevate himself beyond a number 2 or number 3 developmental guy, then he's just not going to be on the team. So, that's what I think about McCarron.
For sure. It was interesting to see. And, I'm sure I'm not the only Niner fan who kind of caught that and was just like, huh. So just wanted to get your take. Again, it's February. And so we kind of get into some stuff that normally wouldn't either make the show or we wouldn't talk to, but sometimes it's fun because we can get into some of this stuff. And what I'm talking about is some of these videos that go viral from some of our players just being goofy. Or I remember last year, the talk was as Trey Lance was coming in and healthy and being the guy, and then being buddies with Ayuk, and they were like having a bromance. And uh some of that stuff was fun to see because there wasn't as much to talk about. And so in regards to that, I want to give you a story about Taybor Pepper. Okay, so it was 2 years ago. Our first game was at Detroit. Now remember, I live about 40 minutes from Michigan and 20 minutes from Ohio. So if you saw last week's show, you remember with John Chapman. Make sure you check out that episode, by the way, and make sure that you check out all of John Chapman's stuff because it is amazing. But he has his tailgates, and I told him that I will be in Ohio because I live very close to Ohio. So we play at Cleveland. All right, so circling back, last 2 seasons ago, we started off in Detroit, and my folks and I went to that game, and we were super close. It was awesome. Detroit fans are gracious because they always assume they're going to lose. They're always in the game, but they somehow find a way to lose, right? And so they're always nice to us because they want us to be nice to them as we win, right? So that's always the storyline. Detroit people are fantastic. So
So they're like the polar opposite of Philly fans.
oh my gosh, it's not even close. Not which, by the way, that season we started 2 games on the road. We go and beat Detroit, and then we go to Philly and beat them. That was a
Yeah,
much different team, but
that was the year that Jason Verrett tore his ACL against Detroit when he had to go back in when the team started blowing that huge lead. Oh yeah.
so we left to beat traffic with 3 minutes left in the game, and we're hearing it on the radio, and we're like, "What is going on?" So anyway, Tabor Pepper. So we are by the 49ers sideline, and it's fun to see some of the players on special teams go through their routines and do different things. And so Pepper is doing his warm-ups and doing things during the game, and it's catching the eyes of the drunk Detroit fans, and they're having a good time, and they're just yelling his name, just yelling it like, "We hope you make a bad, a bad snap," or like, "Make sure you snap it right to his hands." Like, they're just mocking him and just nothing bad, nothing bad at all, but just having some fun. And he kind of did acknowledge him one time, and I'm sitting with all my Niners gear on right next to these guys, and they're just having a good time. And the time that they really got his attention, he goes out and snaps. I mean, it's just a snap, right? But the best snap you've ever seen on a field goal that was just like right there. And I'm wondering what they're gonna do. And now they're cheering him. Now, like he's their favorite player. Like that was a great snap. They went from
From
mocking
jeers
him
to
and
cheers.
basically, even though the jeers were not like Philly jeers, they were just like drinking and just like, "Hey, there's a player who's doing stuff. Let's just yell at him." Like it wasn't, but it was very, very entertaining, and he was a good sport. And I love this video. Tell me about when you first saw it.
So, in case anybody hasn't seen it, I mean, it starts out all slow and like he's got these slow montages of him in 49ers gear and talking about how great the journey is and how great of a time he's had with the 49ers, but how some seasons come to an end. Some chapters come to a close. And you're thinking he's making this like it's his farewell video to the faithful. And he says, but not yet. And he turns around and so it's kind of a big gotcha moment with the fans because it's like 45 seconds of this where you almost expect what's that lady who used to be on all the commercials with the sad dogs.
Sarah McLachlan.
Yeah, you almost expect to have Sarah McLachlan
So
playing in the
that was a
background.
Super Bowl commercial,
Right, it
actually,
was,
too.
yeah,
It
and
was.
it
Yep.
was amazing. So you're expecting this, like, bye Tabor, bye,
Yeah.
and then nope, he's coming back. 3-year deal. He got a little over $1 million guaranteed. So we've locked up our long snapper for 3 years, guys. So don't worry, we're ready to make another run. We are not rebuilding. We are retooling and resetting to make another run. It has been official that we have now secured Taybor Pepper for 3 seasons. So there you go. Which we can make a mockery of a little bit, but I remember before Taybor Pepper when we had a long snapper who we ended up having to cut because he got the yips. Because he got in his mind, couldn't snap the ball anymore. And I remember it was almost heartbreaking watching because he'd been around for a long time, and here he was, and he just couldn't snap the ball. He had like 3 botched snaps in the game, and then was cut on that Monday. That's brutal in the NFL. Like, yeah. So
NFL stands for not for long.
right, and but Tabor's been in there, and I mean, when you don't notice your long snapper, that's a good thing.
Exactly, which is why I had to bring up that story because it was just hilarious that they singled out this guy. He just kept on doing his calisthenics and just snapping the ball and just throwing it up in the air and just you could see he was having a good time. He was probably cracking jokes and stuff. I mean, we were up by like 97 touchdowns at the time. So they're obviously having a good time. And the guys with me, or not with me, they were just in the seats next to me. They were having a good time too. They were about 97 beers in. I think chugged a beer for every touchdown they were behind by. So it made sense.
Yeah,
Perfect
yeah.
for
I
Detroit.
mean,
Love it.
yeah, absolutely. Detroit fans are usually just like the people who are just thankful to be invited to the party.
Oh my
That
gosh.
the entire NFL lets them have a team. Like, hey, cool.
Like, yeah, we
Let's have
never
some
win. You're
fun.
still not kicking us out of here? Like,
Yeah,
okay, cool.
we've had two 0-16 seasons, and we still
We're
haven't
still here.
been moved and made an expansion team. Cool. All right, rock
Now,
on.
I will say we are we haven't discussed this, but I assume we are going to do this absolutely. Months down the road here before the season starts, we will have a show in which we go through the other divisions and give our takes on how the season's going to go. And I will say already, I can tell you, Detroit will not be the butt of any jokes because we already have said we wanted to play Seattle and not Detroit in the playoffs. I don't want to play Detroit. That the pressure would be all over us. And moving forward, Detroit is not the butt of the joke. They are not the laughing stock of the NFL. And you will see that when we make our picks. That's again much down the road. I'm sure we're going to do something like that. But man,
Yeah. I mean, and kudos to them for that win over the Packers at the end of the season. They had nothing to play for. The only thing they had to play for was to keep Green Bay out of the playoffs. And
hey, that's enough.
you would have thought that team was playing in the Super Bowl.
I
I
know,
mean, with
unreal.
how they played and the
The
effort they
interviews after the
gave.
game, yeah, the
I
interviews,
mean,
all that stuff.
I'll tell you, I was low key starting to really like the Lions in that game. Like, I'm going, man.
It's fun to
I
watch.
love my 49ers, but man, these guys, I can respect this. I can. It was totally polar opposite of what we saw with the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't ever want to see them win another game. I want to see Detroit go to the playoffs, and I want to see them at least win a playoff game. Not against us, but I want to see them win a playoff game, just for the sake of the fans and the coaching staff and the players, for the heart they gave. That they said, 17th game, nothing to play for. You'd expect a bad rating. No, we're gonna go out there and we're gonna win, and we're gonna fight tooth and nail. And man, they did. And they're a team that was. If you look at the landscape of the NFC North this year, they're the top team. I know Minnesota's there. And they had their great record. Minnesota was also like 20 points away from being a top 15 draft pick team, and they got exposed by the Giants. Right? So to me, Detroit's the team that's got that division the lead coming into the season. So yeah.
Yeah, be
Yeah.
interesting to see. We'll see what Chicago does with all their buckets of money, but yeah, we'll get into every division, I'm sure, because that will be a fun show to kind of get into the rest of the league and what you think about that. So I want to again, we were talking about Indiana. We've never talked so much about the state of Indiana. However, that is where the combine is, and
Has
so
anybody ever talked this much about the state of Indiana? I mean,
well, I will say it's not very often that both the University of Indiana and the University of Purdue are both ranked in the top 17 for basketball and that IU beats them twice. That does not happen a ton. And so this state is still in a buzz over that IU Purdue game. It was exciting basketball, those of you that watch basketball. So let's get into the combine. And what do you think about there's some more buzz. Again, it's February, guys, so we'll just bring it up. It's not the end all be all, but there are four teams not expected to be at the combine, and our beloved 49ers made that list of one of the four teams that is not expected to go. And I want to bring up a point that was also brought up on Twitter. Remember to follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. Be sure, if you haven't by now, really you need to ask yourself, why haven't I liked and subscribed? Do I really not like these guys? Is it that they have too much knowledge? I don't understand. So please hit the like and subscribe button because it helps the channel so that we can get better guests. Wouldn't it be great if one day, oh, Joe Montana's on the show? Well, you not liking and subscribing is not helping that. So what are you doing? Okay, first of all. Second of all, what was I saying? I already
we're talking about the combine, and the 49ers are not going to the
Yes, the
combine.
Seahawks. This is what I was saying, the Seahawks. So, The Seahawks absolutely crushed the draft. As much as we don't like the She-Hawks or the Sea Chickens or whatever,
The
we don't like them
Toots.
at all. We don't like them at all. However, I will admit that they have some nice pieces that they just drafted all in one draft last year. They were at the combine. So is there something to be said for that? What do you think?
Well, Trent Baalke was at the 2012 combine, and our draft class sucked. So,
All right, well that's our show.
I mean, I'm just saying like that just because you're at the combine does not guarantee you a great draft.
Of
Okay.
course.
I mean, seriously, look back on that 2012 draft class. It was terrible. I mean,
No,
that was the biggest reason that the hard bulky era just went off a cliff so quickly, was because all those guys in 2012 that we were expecting to make a big impact and we let other guys walk, all bombed. There was not a good player out of the bunch. Go look at it. It was a terrible draft class. Like Mike Rumph, first round pick,
oh
bad.
gosh.
Okay, just remember, and we were at the combine that year, so I'm just saying. I think the reason why you're seeing a few teams feel okay with not going to the combine this year, one, the Senior Bowl changed how they went about doing things this year. So in past times, teams would have to select, it was like the combine, who they were going to interview and who they were going to meet with and who they were not. But one thing I found out while I was at the Senior Bowl was that, and this was something that wasn't covered by everybody, because people would want it to be noteworthy when they would talk to a player and say, hey, did you meet with the 49ers? And they go, yeah, I've met the 49ers. Oh, hey guys, they met. Every player at the Senior Bowl met with every single team. They made time for that, and they allotted time for that. So every single player that was at the Senior Bowl has already met with the 49ers, and the 49ers were there. Okay, so they've gotten through a ton of interviews there. So especially if you're looking at a ton of picks in the third and later rounds, you're looking at mostly seniors in those kinds of picks. Okay. You're not having a lot of juniors coming out to be be a sixth round pick. Most of those guys are going to be staying in college to then improve their draft stock. If they're talking to agents and an agent saying, look, you need to stay in because you're going to be a fifth or sixth round pick, you're going to see a lot more of those. Okay. So a lot of these guys are going to be upperclassmen that the 49ers had a big opportunity to at the Senior Bowl. And they also have, with the abilities of Zoom now and doing digital meetings and teams getting so accustomed to that through COVID, I think a lot of them found that they could accomplish the same goals digitally that everyone wants to do in person. And so there's not the need to take this big crew out to the combine to meet with players, because everything from the combine, all the results are all taped. You get all the times and all the results are sent to every team, and they're available to every person. You can go on NFL.com and you can find the results of any player that was at the combine. So there is nothing intrinsically special about being in the building as far as with the players, other than it gave teams the opportunity to meet with players. Well, now if you have another way to do that, then you don't have to do that. You don't have to take everybody away from your facility, stop watching tape, stop watching things. And especially if you're a team that was late in the season, that your coaches haven't been catching up on this, like say a team that didn't make the playoffs and they started watching their head coaches and everybody started watching college prospects. Back when we were preparing to play the Seahawks, you need every week that you can get to catch up on some of that stuff. So, this gives them another opportunity to do that without traveling. And the biggest thing and the other part of the combine that's big is usually teams that are looking to make a trade, is that they're going to be at the combine because that's where you can sit in a room with other GMs and you can talk to a group of them, with 3 or 4 of them together, and see if you're going to be moving pieces around. And there's a lot of talk that's really easy when you're just in the stands watching players, because most of the time when they're watching these players, it's just kind of waiting until the next meeting time happens. So they're just getting together and they're talking about possible draft trade scenarios. That's when a lot of the trade buzz picks up. If we're not interested in being in the trade market at all, which I don't see us being in the trade market as for players, then I don't see a reason why you would really go there. So I don't see any concrete reason to say that, oh, it's It's a mistake that the 49ers are not going to the combine. I think the Seahawks were able to draft really well because they drafted really well, not just because of the combine. Most of the time, and player evaluators will tell you this, that the combine is something that you verify tape. So if you think a guy's really fast and has a lot of speed on tape, then that gets verified at the combine when you get to see their measurables. If a guy runs a 4.3 40 at the combine, but he did not jump off as far as speed on tape, then you're going to go back and you're going to look at why. Okay, why was it just because they were playing way over the top on him all the time? It's never the be all end all of anything, unless you're Al Davis, rest in peace. But he was huge on that, of guys that were amazing combine guys, and then he would pick, was like, always came out mediocre. I remember he picked a guard one year. Can't remember the guy's name because he didn't last very long. He came in and he picked him in, I think it was a high second round, where, because he put up like 44 reps on the bench press, something like that, and ran a high 40. I mean, he was just a workout warrior and an athletic freak. Couldn't play guard. He just was not an NFL offensive lineman. Everything fit the measurables, but didn't work out. So, the combine is great, and it's great for us as fans to look at and see a guy, like a Danny Gray, who runs a really fast 40, which we were at the combine last year, watched Danny Gray run a 40, drafted him, and he barely saw the field. So, there's pros and cons to these. I don't think it's a big deal. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, there's a lot of ins and outs that goes in there, guys, and so we shouldn't necessarily freak out that we're not, expected to go. I wanted to give you guys some more information about the combine as it starts the 28th of February and goes through March 6th. Here are some important dates and times on NFL Network, and this is, I call it Niner time. So we're talking the West Coast. So on Thursday, March 2nd at noon, the defensive linemen and the linebackers, and we're talking on field workouts. And then Friday, March 3rd at noon, defensive backs and special teams. Saturday, March 4th, 10 a.m. is the fun, the quarterback, wide receivers, and tight ends. And then Sunday, March 5th, also at 10 a.m., the running backs and offensive linemen. So that is the schedule for what is happening on the field. Those are the videos that you say like will be recorded and shown over and over again, as it is February and early March. We'll have nothing else to talk about except for the combine. So I do kind of agree with one of my favorite shows, pardon the interruption. They hate the combine because it's just like, we're just gives the NFL something to talk about, or just, Wilbon hates the combine, and so I've been watching that show for since it started, and every year they talk about the combine, and every year they just roll their eyes, and so I'm okay that we're not there either. It's fun to see a guy throw the rack up 57 times. Okay, it's fun, Again, it's some football related stuff. It's NFL. I'll see the stories and stuff. Um, so it is in Indianapolis. It has been there since 1987, and it will at least be there next year as well. So Indianapolis is the mecca for football, obviously. Uh, so that's what's going on this week. We will be back also on Friday to probably give a recap of what's gone on so far, talk about any news stories that come up. So for Johnny Dell, I am Adam Marino. As always, remember, please, guys, follow us on wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us. And then on YouTube, make sure you're liking, subscribing, all of that good stuff so that we can improve the show. We're never a finished product, and we want to keep making good shows for you guys. Thank you for all the support. Thank you for joining us. Take care of each other. And as always, go Niners.